Welcome to Life Rebounding, a ministry of encouragement and hope and to help your life rebound in your walk with Jesus Christ. Thank you for joining me today as we continue to take some time for these devotional thoughts, and we're turning our attention once again today to John chapter 1, verse 16. But before we do that, let me just tell you about Cousin Angus. Now, Cousin Angus back in Cape Breton wasn't the best of students. He had a difficult time bringing home good grades. And so whenever the report cards came out each year at the different points in the year, he would always cringe because he knew that they wouldn't be very well received at home because he never brought home good grades. Well, it just happened that on one of those occasions, the report cards came out, he took it home and he delivered it to his mother. And then he watched the storm clouds begin to brew on his mother's face. And after she looked at his report card and saw that he'd done so poorly in all of his subjects, and she looked at him finally and she said, "Well, Angus, what do you have to say for yourself with all these grades that are so low?" And he looked back at her and without blinking, he said, "Well, one thing you know, I haven't been cheating." Well, you know what? We get all kinds of messages that are given to us, not all of which are welcome. But the Bible provides us with some messages that are indeed very welcome, and they're important for our lives. And John chapter 1, verse 16 gives us one of those messages. John testified about Jesus. This was the message that John gave about Jesus. He said, "He who comes before me has surpassed me because he was before me." And then we come to the verse that we're focusing on. Out of his fullness, being Jesus' fullness, we have already received grace in place of grace already given. Well, I started to do a little digging into this word fullness. And what I discovered is that the same root word for fullness in John 1:16 is the word that's used to describe when Jesus was being led into the wilderness where he would face the temptations from the evil one. And you may remember in Luke chapter 4, verse 1, it says before Jesus was led off that he was full of the Holy Spirit. And so one of the things that strikes me about this word fullness, because it's the same word that's used here, is that the fullness of Jesus that we receive is also the fullness of the Holy Spirit, the same fullness that he received that allowed him to face the tempter's temptations. And when I think about the fullness of the Holy Spirit, well, it's hard not to think about the fruit of the Spirit that he gives to us as he comes and takes up residence within us. The Holy Spirit brings about Christ-like qualities in our character as a result of his presence within us. Things like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, self-control. They're all part of the fruit of the Spirit. That's part of the fullness that's given to us. But I also think about the gifts that the Holy Spirit gives, the ones that equip us to do the ministry. When I've been teaching courses on spiritual gifts, I've often said, if you want to think of the spiritual gifts in a simple way, think about them as the tools that God gives us to work in the particular field he's called us to serve in. And that's what he does. He gives us these gifts, these abilities that come from him that allow us to do the ministry and fulfill the calling that's on our lives as part of the greater mission of what he's doing in the world. And so we get the gifts of the Spirit, we get the fruit of the Spirit, but how about just the reminder that from that moment that we believe, the Holy Spirit takes up residence within us and is present in our lives. We get that fullness as well. And then, on top of that, we get the reminder from John 14 that the Holy Spirit is the one who is our comforter. He is the Holy Paraclete, the one who walks with us, who is alongside of us on the journey, and who brings the comfort that we need in our lives when we need it. And so when I think about this word fullness that we receive from Jesus, it speaks about the fullness of the Holy Spirit as well. That's part of the package that we receive. But wait, there's more yet. As I began to probe around with this word a little bit more, I began to discover that this word fullness is full of fullness. There's a number of different meanings that come from the original language, and one of the meanings that comes from this word, and the word that's actually used is pleromenos, which means fullness, and it can also mean abundance. And so right away my mind goes to John chapter 10, verse 10, where Jesus says, I've come that they, that's being you and me, that they may have life and have it to the full. Same word. And so I'm reminded that Jesus doesn't come to restrict our lives. And you know that many people are reluctant to put their faith in Jesus and have a relationship with him because their first thought is the things that they're going to have to give up. And that's not the case with this. This word fullness reminds us that Jesus doesn't come to restrict our lives. He comes to pour added value into them, to make them full. Without his fullness, actually, you could make the case that our lives are in deficit until we get to taste that fullness of God that comes from him. And so that's just the beginning of what this word means, that there is a fullness that's available to us. And we'll explore this further more in subsequent devotions as we look at John 1, verse 16. But I want to leave you with this thought today, that there is a fullness that is available to you that comes by way of the Holy Spirit, a fullness that makes your life complete and abundant. That's why Jesus came. Won't you step up today and receive his invitation to life and to fullness as only he can bring it, to erase the deficit in your life of trying to live life on your own terms, in your own way, with you as God and Master? Won't you come and accept his invitation to a full life because of all that he's done for us on the cross of Calvary? Well, that's my encouragement to you today. May the Lord bless you and fill you with all his fullness today.